The prophets give us all that we know. And they gave us the gift of writing. And this is what we believe, because we believe that all beneficial knowledge comes to us through prophecy. Rational medicine, things like that, very beneficial things. And the scholars, the men and women of knowledge, they are the heirs of the prophets. They are the heirs of the prophets because they must master that knowledge and they must practice that knowledge. And they must teach that knowledge. So Islamic civilization is really a miracle. It's an absolute miracle that these blessed people who came out of the Arabian Peninsula, and I love the Arabian Peninsula, as many of you do too, the land of Mecca and Medina, and I lived there for many years, and I loved it. Mecca and Medina, the mountains, it's so beautiful there. It's really beautiful, really beautiful. And so it came out of that environment, and then it inherits the world. And it builds out of this an incredible edifice of civilization and knowledge. And one of the greatest accomplishments of Islam in its history was what we can call the rooting of knowledge. The rooting of knowledge. In other words, that the Muslims inherited prophetic knowledge, the Quran and the Sunnah. They inherited also from their Arab past certain knowledge about veterinary medicine, especially how to take care of horses. Horses were extremely important for them. They inherited also certain knowledge about history and medicine. Okay, and then they received all this other knowledge, and they were able to take it and put it together, and we call that rooting knowledge. And how did they do that? This is very interesting, and there are great studies that have been done of this. Unfortunately, one of the greatest studies is not in English, it's in German. It's by a great Turkish scholar who writes in German. His name is Fuad Sezgin. Fantastic. Okay, and he shows you how all of these sciences develop. Veterinary medicine, botany, agriculture, architecture, everything. Mathematics, geometry, the Islamic sciences before that. And that's really valuable. And you see that this, first of all, it was a long period. It wasn't something that happened overnight. This took time. Usually it took over 200 years. Sometimes it went fast because there were certain types of knowledge like agriculture that Muslims were extremely interested in. And the rise of Islam led to one of the greatest agricultural revolutions in the history of humankind. That Muslims learned water, hydrology, how to use water, how to keep water pure, how to turn the desert into a garden. You know, we produced incredible agricultural production. Okay, this was one of our main concerns. And we were very good at it, really. Gardening, botany, zoology. These things developed really fast. Medicine also. Medicine was very important to us, and our medicine develops and develops and develops. Mathematics is something that we're famous for. Algebra, as you know, comes from the Arabic al-jabr. We still call our numbers Arabic numbers because we got these numbers, exactly the numbers we use here from Muslim Spain. And they wrote 1, 2, 3, 4 in numbers almost like these on the clock. In the Muslim world, we have two types of Arabic numbers. We have the ones in the East, which are often called Indian numbers. And we have the ones in the West, which are those ones on our clock, which are called Arab numerals, Arabic numerals. And if you go to the West in the Muslim world, you'll see they use those numbers. They don't use the ones you use in India and Pakistan, or in Syria or Egypt. Okay, but the number system is a huge development, And it is a prime example of rooting knowledge, that Muslims got the knowledge of numbers, they got the knowledge of mathematics and geometry and many other things from all kinds of sources. They got them from Persia, from India, from the Greeks, from the rabbis, from all kinds of people. And they worked on them. To synthesize mathematics the way that Muslims did took longer than anything else. It takes almost 100 years longer than anything else. And then you have these incredible people, the Musa brothers, the three Musa brothers. You have Al-Khawarizmi and others who then get it. And they begin to produce incredible mathematics, incredible mathematics. And so this is a great thing. Islam did that in the past. And I believe that this is one of the most important obligations that this community has, that we have. We've got to create institutions. We're creating institutions. This is an institution. But we've got to create academic institutions that are number one, that are the equal of the University of Michigan or Chicago or Harvard or Yale or Oxford or Cambridge or Sorbonne or anything else. And we can do that with people like you. We can definitely do that with people like you. We have in this community, in many places, Muslim valedictorians in high school and college who mastered 3 disciplines. I can name some names if you wanted. They would be embarrassed, but I could name some names. We have some really talented people in this community, but we have to develop institutions of learning that produce scholars, that produce scholarship, that attain scholarship and produce it. And we have to root all the knowledges that we use today: language, psychology, sociology, anthropology, physics, chemistry, law, everything. What do we mean by that? We mean by that we discover the principles of theology and law, because law is also truth-based in our belief, that can be the foundation and should be the foundation and is the foundation of the truth of these disciplines. We believe that truth is one. Okay, so then we try to give them all a common language, a common denominator, and we try to humanize them that way. This is really, really important. This is something that I really love, and I hope and pray that we can work together and live long enough that we can do things like this. This is really great stuff. And this, if we could accomplish this, then you see what comes out of it. You see what comes out of that. So things like anthropology, how would you root it? You find what it's actually doing, what the conceptions are, how we value those conceptions. We root them. We look at the language also, and then also we do benefit from them in return. But if we root it, the benefit we get will be 100 times more. Then if I studied anthropology now, I'll get a lot of benefit. I've done that in the past. I've studied anthropology, especially cultural anthropology, to try to learn about the way that the society of the Prophet ﷺ worked. Because you have cultural anthropologists who do things like that. How do societies like that work, that are not based on government or administration? They can give you lots of insight. So we can benefit from them. They can benefit from us. Our tradition is an amazing thing. And what is our tradition? That's a huge topic. But one of the things, however you define our tradition, that some people would agree, many people would agree, I hope. I know certain people who would. They would agree that however you define our tradition, that we will have to say that our tradition is such that any man or woman of good mind and body who's capable to be a scholar, and there are many men and women who are, and they have an obligation to get scholarship, by the way. In Islamic law, scholarship is not just for men. In Islamic law, it is a societal fard kifaya of men and women to master Islamic sciences. Not just for men. Okay, that is very clear in Islamic law. That is very clear in Islamic law. So, you know, the rooting of knowledge is that when we do that, then it means that a man or woman who has the capacity, as many of you do, and the training, and may we be able to get that, institutions that can train, and who have the time and a relatively large life. May Allah give us long lives and good health. Okay? Can master the whole thing from A to Z. And do we have examples of that in Islamic history? Whew, we've got thousands of examples of that. The people that would be called in English polymaths, meaning they mastered everything. Ibn Taymiyyah is an example of that. Al-Razi is an example of that. Imam al-Qarafi is an example of that. You can go on. It's like al-Qarafi, you know, it's like he knew everything that you could know in his time. He used to make water clocks as a hobby. You know, when he would write about Islamic law, you know, he would use algebra and other things like that to solve inheritance problems. When he would talk about finding the Qibla, he uses astronomy. I mean, he's incredible, Al-Qarafi. Absolutely everything that was known in his time, he mastered. When I was at the University of Michigan, I was invited to go to Tunisia. I had the honor there to meet Shaykh Shadili al-Nayfar, who is one of the greatest scholars I ever knew, and we remained friends until the day he died. He was a beautiful man, beautiful man. He was the king of the ulama of Tunisia, and Tunisians are great people, and Tunisian scholarship is incredible scholarship. And I went to his house in Tunis. Beautiful house, old Tunisian house with Andalusian flavor, because he was an Andalusian. His family came from the north of Spain. They still had the keys to their house that was taken away from them. And he had books everywhere, manuscripts everywhere. And I was amazed. And he said, I said, "You've got books everywhere." And he said, "Even in the kitchen?" And he took me into his kitchen, and he had manuscripts in his kitchen. And my belief in Shadili and Nayfar, may Allah have mercy upon him, was that he was a master of everything that was there. How? How is that possible? Was he able to read all of that? I don't think that's possible. How? Because knowledge is rooted. And all of that knowledge in his mind was rooted. It has usul, whether it's mathematics, whether it's astronomy, whether it is hadith or Quran, history, whatever it may be. And that means that every knowledge has a door and a vestibule, an entrance from that door. How many of you have read the Ajurumiyya? In Arabic grammar, the Ajurumiyya. We taught it in Spain in 1982, 83. The Ajurumiyya, our published edition of it, was in big letters because the people were new Muslims. And it was 15 pages. 15 pages with all of the basic grammar of the Arabic language. And if you go to Spain today, but you go there and meet some of our brothers and sisters, some of them studied with me, and when you meet them, say, "Al-kalamu huwa al-lafz al-murakkab al-mufidu bil-wada' wa aqsamuhu thalatha." That's how the Ajurumiyya begins. Speech, "Al-kalamu huwa al-lafz al-murakkab al-mufidu bil-wada'." They all, because we made them memorize it. So they all memorized that, and they still remember it to this day. They didn't forget it. But the Ajurumiyya is a key. It's a key to the root. It's a key to the cellar, to the foundations. One of the greatest books in Islamic history is Kitab Sibawayh, which is one of the most brilliant works in grammar and sarf, morphology, that was ever written. It's hard. It's difficult. You want to make it easy? Start with the Ajurumiyah. Start with the Ajurumiyah, and inshallah, you will find that Sibawayh is not so hard anymore. So this is the great thing. And so this is rooting knowledge. Rooting knowledge puts it on foundations. You make the foundations accessible. And then people can get knowledge. Scholars can get knowledge of everything. They like to do that if they can. They like to do that. You know, one of the greatest scholars in Islamic history is Fatima ibn Muhammad al-Halabiyah. How many of you know her? Fatima bint Muhammad al-Halabiyah, whose husband was al-Kashani. You know Kashani if you're Hanafis. He is the author of Bada'i' as-Sana'i'. That was his dowry. That was his dowry to marry, to take the hand of Fatima. And Fatima was a greater scholar than Kashani, and her father was one of the masters of the Hanafi school. And she was asked, kings wanted to marry her because she was also beautiful. We're told that she was the most beautiful woman of her time. I don't know how you would know that, but she was very beautiful. And kings wanted to marry her, princes wanted to marry her. She said, no. But when Kashani wrote his commentary on her father's book, which is called, and the commentary is called Bada'i' as-Sana'i', then that's the dowry. You can marry me. And Al-Kashani would never give a fatwa unless her father signed it first, she signed it second, and then he would sign it. And then when her father died, he wouldn't give a fatwa unless she signed it first. And when she died, nothing to live for. She was a great woman, And she was the counselor of whom? Nuruddin Zengi and Salahuddin, Fatima. We have great women in our history, but these great men and women, they can master it all, not because they can get all that information. That's not possible. They get the roots. They get the roots. So this is what we have to do today. We live in a time when the more we learn, the less we know. That's not good. That's not good, you know. Our libraries are so big, and our libraries now are small, because what's available on the internet is 10 times, 100 times bigger than that. What are we going to do with all that information? The more we learn, the less we know. We've got to specialize. Yeah, but where's the human dimension? And if we don't have a human dimension on this knowledge, where will it take us? And will it be beneficial? Or will it be harmful? That's why you have to root knowledge. Once you root knowledge, then all of that knowledge, as vast as it may be, it becomes human in size. And that means also that we can use it. I believe in Islam, and I also believe in Islamic civilization. You're not required to do that. But Islamic civilization to me is just like it'll break your heart. If you know what we achieved in Cairo or Damascus or Bukhara, you know, or Spain or Portugal, then it's like, this was destroyed. I don't think I can bear that. I don't think I can bear that. It's really hard to bear. And why? Why was this destroyed? What was the reason for that? You know, we are strong people. We survived genocide time after again and the destruction of whole civilizations. And we keep going. We keep going. But Islamic civilization has a great power, and it's not dead, bi'iznillahi ta'ala. And there are scholars that would say, there's a Frenchman, his name is Jacques Ellul, E-L-U-L, Ellul. And Jacques Ellul wrote this is many years ago, he believed that Islamic civilization in Spain and Portugal reached the highest limit, the highest possible peak. No, that can't be. No, he said, no, I believe that, truly. Because he said he knew that. He knew what they had. He said they could have produced anything that Europe would produce over the next hundreds of years. But they didn't do it. They didn't need to do it. And he says also that they didn't want to do it because their civilization was balanced. Their civilization was based on honoring nature and protecting nature and water and animals and living in a way that is sustainable. Because, and that's what he says, they wouldn't open the door to a type of civilization that would become like industrial Europe, which will be more powerful and more destructive, but it won't be sustainable. And it will turn ugly the things that were beautiful. That might be romantic. I was attracted to it very much because I believed in Islamic civilization. And that's not a religious belief, that's a historical belief. But I believe in that more now than I did then, because I know more about Muslim Spain and Portugal now than I knew then. And this would have been true of other parts of the Muslim world as well. So we don't cry over the past, and we don't want to romanticize the past. But what we ask Allah to give us is the gift to do this deen, to live this deen, to root knowledge. And not just in theology, not just in law, not just in hadith, not just in Quran, in anthropology, sociology, law, psychology, social psychology. Anthropologists and sociologists don't speak the same language. Different schools of sociology and anthropology don't speak the same language. Dr. Jackson, who is one of the gifts to Michigan that Allah has given, and he's a brilliant human being and a great human being. And I learn a lot from him. I study him like a student would study, especially his words. The man has incredible ability to articulate and express. What was I going to say? I lost my chain of thought. Got carried away with Dr. Jackson. Yeah. So Dr. Jackson has written these incredible books about black theology, black suffering. He's written about the third resurrection. He has written about other things like that. And we had people, Rami Nashashibi in Chicago, who is another amazing person, who tried to get the Department of Sociology at the University of Chicago. They like him. He's one of their students. He got a PhD from them to study some of Dr. Jackson's books. They wouldn't do it because he's not a sociologist. He doesn't use their language. Okay, so then what is the value of your sociology? Historians don't study sociology usually. Sociologists don't study history. They don't use the same methodology. They don't use the same language. We as Muslims don't feel comfortable with that because we believe that the truth is one. And, you know, in the past, one of the greatest things that we achieved was the ability to take all of this knowledge and make it bloom and make it accessible to human beings. And that is necessary in civilization so that the thing stays balanced. You know, we as human beings have to understand what we know. We have to understand its implications.